So welcome everyone to the Chemical and Systems Biology information session. We're very excited to have you guys here. And we're excited to be presenting to you and then also answering some of your questions. My name's Elizabeth. I'm the Student Services Officer for CSB, and I am joined by our chair, Dr. James Chen, and our Director of Graduate Studies and our admissions chair, Dr. Dan Hirosh. I'm also joined by my student services colleague, Dana Ramallo, and some awesome CSB grad students, Rebecca, Jacob, Isabel, Christy, Sife, Laura, and Owen. And you'll be hearing from them a little bit later. So some of the things we're going to discuss today is, why is CSB? Why is it a great training environment? What's the admissions process like? What do we look for in applicants? And then towards the end, we'll talk about, or we'll open it up to some Q&A. And our students are also going to discuss, some great events that we do, some great department activities and resources they've found helpful. If you have questions throughout the presentation, please feel free to just drop it in the chat or the Q&A section. And at the end, Owen, one of our students, is going to read them out loud for our panelists to answer. And you should be able to submit your questions anonymously or not. Please keep in mind that if you see a question that you really like, you're welcome to upvote it by hitting a thumbs up. And lastly, this presentation is being recorded, so we are going to post it on our website should you want to go back and watch this later. And we'll also be sending the slides out. So with that, let's get started.
Great. Okay, so I'm Dan, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about our program and why we think it's such a good fit for students like you. We'll go over how we fit into the biosciences program at Stanford more broadly, as well as how admissions works, what we look for in applicants, might surprise you, and the requirements to graduate with a degree. Okay, so I think the sort of special sauce, the secret sauce of our program is that we explore the frontiers of basic science and molecular medicine. We use really diverse models and ask really sometimes very different questions, but fundamentally we're united by an effort to understand mechanism really at the molecular and chemical level, not just of an individual protein or individual pathway, but even systems of pathways, and try to see how emergent properties of those networks give rise to biological function and its derangement in the context of disease. Okay, and the faculty really are leaders in their field, and we're small, but we pack a really big punch and emphasize interdisciplinary and collaborative learning. So a student in those labs, right, is going to have experience in a wide variety of areas, whether that's chemical synthesis or mathematical modeling, whether it's a cell biological screen or a genomics approach. All of those things are happening within the core group of 11 primary and secondary faculty, and also our courtesy faculty that are spread in other primary departments throughout the campus. So I think this really emphasizes diversity, and that really is at the core of what is special about our program. We're interested in understanding complex regulatory systems that are associated both with normal biology and with disease. And the students may take slightly different approaches depending upon their interests and their lab's interests in tackling those. If you can advance. Very good. So, we may use very often, right, when even synthesize inhibitors of proteins that are of interest to us. And we often model as well, right? So, it's one of the huge strengths of the department is trying to achieve an understanding of biological systems so complete as to be able to really model them from first principles. All right. And what is the greatest evidence of this, right? It's the work that our trainees do. So really they reproducibly push the boundaries of knowledge and often translate their discoveries into therapeutic strategies. So these are just example doctoral theses that folks have submitted over the last couple of years. And you get a sense for the breadth of the scholarship, whether that's looking at the influence of protein stability and catalytic activity of pathogenic mutants in an enzyme, or trying to understand how we can do quantitative genetic mapping to understand the basis of trait variation more deeply, or understanding gene regulation in space and time, generating new molecules that are able to do amazing things, right, to the activity of regulatory proteins, or really beautiful work in cell biology. And all of this, again, it's under the same umbrella. I think there are other departments out there that also have very diverse bodies of work that people pursue, but they tend to be in much larger departments. So you can sort of lose yourself. Here, we're a very close-knit community. Okay, and so the advantage, of course, of being in a small group is that everyone knows you, and you sort of again feel like a family. The disadvantage is that it could seem claustrophobic at times, right? But we get around that by the fact that at Stanford we have a larger biosciences umbrella in which all of us are integrated. So you, for example, would take your first course with all of the biosciences students together. You get to know them very well, but each of us have all kinds of affiliations with other groups on campus, whether that be in the Department of Chemistry or Bioengineering and Cancer Biology program, or even in the Department of Medicine. In addition to the departmental structure, there are institutes that bring together faculty from really very diverse areas, whether that's the ChemH Institute, the Cancer Institute, Neurosciences Institute. And as you can see, all of us have very strong connections to these communities as well. And I should say, these have often lunchtime seminars, other activities that you can also participate in to really enrich in the work that you're able to do here, your training here. Okay, and even better, we have 2 new faculty arriving at the start of next year. I'm very excited for them to come. So one, Nicole Martinez, is studying a really interesting area, epigenetic modification of RNAs, and how this impacts all kinds of aspects of development and can be deranged in disease. And Casper Regala is a really innovative structural biologist who's interested in TOR pathway, really both inspiring scientists who will make our community even better. And James, maybe you want to take over here.
Great. Hello, everyone. I'm James Chen. I'm chair of CSB. And you're probably also wondering why get a PhD in the first place, at least some of you may be, and why within chemical systems biology. As I look back, really the most important resource or product of our department are our trainees. We really want to train individuals who are really well versed in molecular science, in quantitative understanding of biology. And I think on this slide, we're just illustrating a few examples of our alumni and what they've gone on to do. We're really excited to see the careers that they've carved out for themselves. Just on this list, for example, Natalia Gomez-Espina. She originally was from Colombia, and from that I mean a country in South America, not the university in New York. But she was an MD PhD student in our department who was studying calcium signaling and the role in transcription. She eventually did a postdoc with Matthew Porteous, who's also at Stanford, but she's now an independent faculty member at Stanford studying pediatric patients with lysosomal disease disorders, using genome editing strategies to try to treat them. Eric Green, also an MD PhD student at Stanford, also looking at calcium signaling and its interactions, in his case, with tumor suppressors. He's now the head of research and translational science at Maze Therapeutics. So he's really trying to push his scientific knowledge at scale at the biotechnology industry. Azumi Hinkson was a PhD student studying age-dependent changes in the proteome. So again, a very mechanistic understanding, but at a systems-wide level. She actually pursued a policy fellow position in Washington, D.C., the AAAS Science and Technology Policy Fellowship Program, but she now is an alliance manager at Gilead Sciences, in which she's working with that company to figure out how to make mergers, acquisitions, collaborations with other companies to try to really develop their products in a really effective and quick and reduced cost manner. Ari Firestone was a PhD student studying motor proteins called cytoplasmic dyneins, which control cell division and signaling. He did a postdoc with Kevin Shannon at UCSF, and now is a principal investigator at Calico Life Sciences, which some of you may know is an offshoot from Google. That's their venture into biotechnology, and he's trying to develop new cancer drugs. Laura was a PhD student trying to discover small molecule dependent protein degrons and trying to use them to study protein function. She eventually did a postdoc with David Alice at Rockefeller University, and she is now junior faculty at UT Southwestern, trying to understand the epigenetic mechanisms that control cell fate decisions. And finally, Gautam Day was a PhD student in our department who actually had a pretty bioinformatic dissertation studying how phylogenetic profiling can be used to try to predict functional modules rather in mammalian systems. He eventually did a postdoc that was more in wet science in Buzz Balb's lab at University College London, where he was studying nuclear envelope breakdown during mitosis. He is now an independent group leader at EMBL, studying nuclear organization, architecture, and remodeling. So I think these are really nice examples of success stories in academia and industry. We've also had a number of students who've gone on to pursue careers in policy. One of our graduates had a job in the FDA for a while. Others have gone on to careers in patent law and other science-related areas, but we're proud of all of them. And we hope that others who are training right now in our labs will be equally successful in the future.
So before you become an alumni, we do have some requirements for the PhD, and they're pretty standard. I'm just going to go through them briefly right now. So we have a great curriculum. Some of the courses I want to highlight are Foundations in Experimental Biology. We have a course, Practical Tutorial on the Modeling of Signal Transduction Motives. And you need to take, at least one chemical biology course and about 3 electives. And a common elective I've seen taken is CSB 240A and another one CSB 240B. And those are called A Practical Approach to Drug Discovery. The curriculum's nice because we have various elective choices and you have options to take choices in other biosciences departments. Another requirement is we have a qualifying exam. Again, that's pretty standard. After that, you would apply to be an official PhD candidate. Down the line, you would create a reading committee, and these are the people that are going to be, reviewing your written dissertation. By the time you are defending, we ask that you have accepted at least 1 or more peer-reviewed research publications. And then you'll also have, the oral exam and a written portion of that as well, a PhD dissertation. And throughout your graduate studies here, you'll have a thesis committee, and they can help provide some structure and guidance along the way as well. In terms of funding, I'll make this brief, but Stanford is unique in that we have something called the Biosciences Scholars Program. So years 1 through 4, the Dean's Office basically covers your stipend, tuition, and health insurance. And then years 5 and on, your advisor would cover you. We have our students apply for external fellowships, so that includes NSF. And we have some great resources to help with how to write those, write the proposals. We have a grant writing academy workshop and different resources like that. And with that, I will go to our students. Jacob, do you want to start us off?
Thanks, Elizabeth. Hi, I'm Jacob Kim, and me and the other panelists, grad student panelists, are going to talk about the more community aspects of chemical and systems biology, as well as Stanford Biosciences as a whole. And I'm a 4th-year PhD student in CSB, and I work in Jan Scottheim's lab studying cell size regulation. And before that, I was a tech at Sloan Kettering, and before that, I graduated with the major in biology at Williams College.
Hi, I'm Rebecca. I'm a 3rd-year student in Lian Lee's lab studying mechanisms of innate immune activation. And I'm originally from Chicago, but I came to the West Coast for college. I went to Berkeley, which was just across the bay. And then upon graduating, I spent a couple of years as a technician here at Stanford prior to entering grad school.
Hi, I'm Isabel. I'm a first year student in CSB. Right now I'm rotating in Daria Mosley-Rosen's lab, doing a project studying proteins that modulate mitochondrial dynamics. Before coming to Stanford, I went to the University of Minnesota where I studied biochemistry, and I just graduated in the spring, so I didn't take any time off.
Hi everyone, my name is Sife. I'm a fourth year grad student and I have two advisors, and Dan and Alice. And right now I'm working on developing methods to edit the mitochondrial genome. And before grad school, I did college at the University of Cambridge in the UK and also had a master's degree before coming to grad school.
Hi, my name is Christy. I'm a second year student and I'm joined between Howard Chang's lab and Joanna Wasoka's. And I'm currently studying the mechanism of random monoallelic expression. Prior to coming to Stanford, I did an undergrad at UCLA and I came straight from there to grad school.
And my name is Laura. I'm a fifth year graduate student in Matt Bojo's lab, where I'm using chemical tools to study the gut microbiome. I'm originally from North Carolina, and then I went to college in a small liberal arts school in Maine called Bowdoin, where I was a biochemistry major. And then I did neuroscience research for 2 years as a tech in Boston before coming here.
Oh, sorry, I was muted. So CSB has several community events, like Dan was talking about. We have a smaller community compared to the rest of the biosciences, which provides opportunities for us to really get to know each other. So some of these events include summer lab hosted happy hours, monthly birthday celebrations, holiday parties. We just had a Halloween party, and then various grad student bonding events. So the department's very supportive of different events that you can suggest to bring people together.
CSB also holds an annual retreat, and most recently it's been at a really nice resort in Santa Cruz, but in the past has also been held in Monterey or Tahoe. It usually takes place in the beginning of the year, so it's a really great opportunity for the incoming students to learn about all the different labs in CSB and meet the students and faculty that comprise the department. And in general, it's a really nice chance for everyone to learn about other people's projects through poster sessions and student talks. Each year, the department also invites CSB alumni to come back and share how their journey has sort of unfolded post-grad school and why they chose the specific career steps that they did. We've had panelists that have gone on to start their own companies or become professors. We even had someone that was an editor at Nature Genetics. So in general, it's a great chance for current students to learn about the different possible opportunities and career paths that can exist after grad school and how CSB can help them get there. And then within CSB, we also have a first year mentorship program where first year students are paired with older grad students in the department who can kind of act as a point person to discuss rotations, what classes to take, and just how to navigate that first year in general. Laura and I, and along with another grad student, Larissa, very recently started a Women in CSB group. And this is open to all women or women identifying graduate students in the department. And our plan is to get together a few times each quarter, always over a meal and drinks, and just be able to check in with each other and pass on advice and tips to each other, both science-wise and also in a more personal sense. And several students within the department have also formed CSB Decide as part of the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Initiative to advocate for all student voices, opinions, and needs, as well as support diversity in graduate recruitment and mentorship. And they've really been pioneering these efforts to make our department more equitable and have opened up some much needed conversations about how to make the department better. And these last few support systems exist similarly on a larger scale for all of the biosciences, and we'll touch on some of those organizations later on.
To further promote the flow of scientific ideas within the CSB community, the department also hosts Science Circle. So every week we have pizza talks where we get served pizza for lunch, but we also hear one grad student and one postdoc give a talk on their projects that they're currently working on, about a 25-minute talk, and they're able to get some feedback from the department. We also have think tanks for second-year grad students and first-year postdocs who are just starting their projects for them to kind of get ideas and advice from other people in the department on their projects. In addition to that, we also invite faculty from all over the world to give talks about their fascinating research. They give about an hour talking their research, and also everyone in the community is invited to a coffee hour with them to kind of talk to them, whether it's about their research or their scientific journey. And it's a great way to connect with faculty outside of Stanford. So you have that also available.
So as we mentioned, CSB is part of the larger biosciences community that has a total of 14 home programs. So being in CSB, you get the benefits of both a small department, but the benefits of a large group like collaboration and interdisciplinary research within the biosciences. The biosciences is also kind of a social community for the students. So we have a student government called the Stanford Biosciences Student Association that puts on a variety of different social events, including an orientation camping trip, barbecues, happy hours, and trivia night to kind of foster a sense of community across biosciences home programs. And people will get together for parties and football games, tailgates. So there's a lot of opportunities to meet people in other home programs.
And for housing, you basically have two options to live on campus or off campus. And if you choose to live on campus, it's subsidized so that if you are staying in a 2-bedroom, 1-bath, you would be paying about $13.50 per month. And they're guaranteed for 5 years if you stay at that same apartment. And you can choose to live in 4 different neighborhoods, and each one has kind of their own culture. For example, Lyman tends to be quieter, while Rains, people who live in Rains tend to socialize more. And if you choose to live, also you could apply to couples and family housing. And if you choose to live off campus, you kind of have more freedom to choose where to live, but usually, well, it can cost more and you'll have to account for a commute. But the nice thing is that the campus pays for a free Caltrain ticket if you live outside the Stanford zip code. And so that is one pro of living off campus.
So just a little bit about what it's like to live here. I know coming from the Midwest, I was concerned about what it would be like to live in the Bay Area with high prices, but Stanford's really nicely situated. There's a Walmart and Target within 3.5 miles, and different grocery options like Trader Joe's, Costco, and Safeway nearby. We're also really close to a big shopping center called the Stanford Shopping Center, and much of this area is very bike friendly. So while a lot of students have bikes, some of us do have cars, and you can either bring your own car or rent a car on campus to go to a variety of different areas in the Bay. There's also the Caltrain that connects from San Jose to San Francisco. And the cost of living is generally higher here, but Stanford kind of accommodates for this by providing a higher stipend than most other places. So right now, the stipend is about $47,000, but this changes.
I personally think that one of the best parts of living in the Bay Area is the easy access to a beautiful variety of nature all around us. So you can find a nice hiking path just in our backyard at the Dish, or if you go north into Marin County, you have Mount Tam and Point Reyes. Half Moon Bay is about a 40-minute drive away, and there's some nice coastal trails and fresh seafood there. And of course, there's Yosemite, which is a bit farther away, but very much worth the drive. And as Christy mentioned, San Francisco is about a 50-minute Caltrain ride away, or a 45-minute drive. And Santa Cruz and Monterey are both very popular weekend getaways, and they're relatively close by. And Lake Tahoe is great for skiing and snowboarding in the winter, or hikes and different water activities in the summer. Sorry. And as for some of the bigger biosciences-wide organizations and programs, there's SBSA that I think Isabel touched on, that's comprised of student representatives from all the home programs. They organize monthly general meetings to discuss student issues and connect students in different programs. And they also organize events like monthly happy hours, barbecues, and the first year camping trip. And they also run different mentorship programs, including ones specific to first year students, and then ones more geared towards like fellowship application prep. BioAIMS is a great organization that advocates for underrepresented minority groups, and not only do they provide a space to talk about these specific issues, but they also offer great workshops and career development sessions and also networking opportunities. WISE is a great organization that supports women in science and engineering by, again, providing a space to discuss student issues, career options, how to manage work-life balance, and just ways to best navigate interactions in the lab. And lastly, Advance is a very popular summer program that I haven't personally participated in, but I have many friends that did, and they only have really great things to say about it. It's an 8-week program that happens in the summer before you begin grad school, and has been really helpful in providing a smooth transition into grad school and creates a community for students before they even arrive at Stanford. And this often leads to many long-lasting friendships that last throughout grad school. They also offer many workshops to showcase the resources available at Stanford, as well as the ability to interact and network with professors in different departments. And there's even an opportunity to do a summer rotation that includes a stipend.
Other than those that Rebecca just mentioned, we also have other smaller organizations. We have one that advocates for people with disabilities. If they're interested in policy, there are many policy discussions as hosted by the policy group. And if they're interested in outreach or mentorship opportunities, we have plenty, mentoring students from primary school with the science bus, to high school students with Flash and FAST, and also to undergraduate students through the SSRP AmGym program and also Stanford's own summer research program. And in terms of support for international students, I myself am an international student. I was born in China and I did my high school in Singapore and college in the UK before coming to the US. And I was very happy to find that we as a department actually has a very diverse body of faculty, students, and postdocs. And out of the 11 primary faculties, four of them were born outside of the US. And the Eurosh Lab has people from 5 different countries, thus excluding the US. And as an international student, you are supported by the International Center at Stanford for all the paperwork that's required to enter the US, for internships, for visa, and every year they also hold tax webinars to help you navigate with taxes. And there are also special events for international students, such as like lunches with different faculty, and also celebrating various festivals. And we have also student organizations led by students from very different countries and cultures that organize different social events and also help you connect to alumni to different parts of the world. And in terms of food, which is something I definitely care about, and there are a lot of options to find food that you are familiar with or you want to explore in the Bay Area. And something special about Stanford dining halls, we have a Mexican special stall at Stern, which is one of the dining halls, and a Southeast Asian special section at Wilbur, which is a dining hall that I go pretty frequently.
Okay, and to wrap up the student presentation section, I want to talk about some of the training programs that CSB students often get involved in. One of them is the molecular pharmacology training program, which is mostly based out of CSB, and it's focusing on trying to train the graduate students about the drug discovery and development process. Another one is the Chemistry Biology Interface, or CBI training program, and that is out of the ChemH Institute that Dan mentioned earlier. That institute is focused on trying to unite chemists, bioscientists, and engineers towards doing interdisciplinary research to improve human health. And across these two training programs, there are select curricula that overlap pretty well with the CSB curriculum, so it's not too many extra courses, but they give you also opportunities to attend various retreats, and I think most importantly, network with other like-minded students and faculty that are interested in doing those kinds of research. And then another really cool program you can get involved in is the Ignite program, which is actually from Stanford's Graduate School of Business. And it's targeted towards non-business students. But if you're interested in learning how to develop a business plan and how to pitch it, it's a 4-week intensive course that we've had a number of CSB students take. And then finally, we've mentioned this briefly, but one of the reasons that I decided to come to Stanford is the Spark program. So it was started by a couple CSB faculty almost 20 years ago at this point, but the idea is to try and bridge the gap between academic drug discovery and clinical applications of those academic discoveries. And so the core of the program is focused on selecting academic projects that have a lot of clinical promise, and not only providing a little bit of funding, but also more importantly, connecting you to a network of industry and government experts. And these experts can provide advice on things about picking the right animal model, designing clinical trials, doing drug formulation, how to file a patent. And it really helps progress projects towards actually getting into patients. And as graduate students, we have a unique opportunity to get access to this program through the courses that Elizabeth mentioned earlier. And in this, we get lectures from all of these experts about these variety of different topics that are important for the drug discovery process that you wouldn't normally get in academic training. And then throughout the course, you're developing your own project with a small group, and then you can pitch that project to that same group of mentors and get your project funded yourself.
Well, that wraps it up for our presentation. Thank you everyone for presenting. Owen, do you mind going into the Q&A and letting us know if there's any questions?
None so far.
Okay.
I will.
Someone raised their hand, I think. If you have a question, feel free to just type it in the Q&A.
There's one there now, I can see. Yeah. So it says that their favorite home program is genetics, but also wants to choose some CSB faculty as faculty of interest. Please tell me how it will affect the application. Thank you very much. Yeah, so at Stanford, the admission application comes through the biosciences umbrella, and then it's distributed to home programs that you select. You're allowed to select 2. And except in extraordinary circumstances, it's typically the first home program that will review your application. What is most important is that you express in your personal statement kind of a cogent idea about problems that excite you. There's also a question about, you to describe an interesting scientific problem. And so kind of, in those spaces, as well as in another portion, you're allowed to say, faculty that are of interest to you. And I think, you want to be sure that there's some narrative thread there, that they coalesce on some area, although it's okay if there are a couple. And make sure that there's a critical mass of faculty in the department that the home program that you're selecting is number 1. So let's say you would pick 1 person in genetics and 8 people in our department and another 5 yet in other places. That's probably going to look a little bit bizarre. But if you have 50-50 or maybe even a majority in genetics and a few in our department, then I suspect they would look upon that favorably.
Great, thanks, Dan.
And also, I can add in
please.
really fast that just because you're applying, you should apply for the program that you feel most comfortable and will support you scientifically, but you do not have to join a lab that is affiliated with that program, which is another nice thing about the biosciences. Obviously, the training that you get is most aligned with the labs that are affiliated with a program, but you are not solely limited to joining a lab in your home program.
Great. Carly's asking, do you have to establish a connection with a faculty member for research prior to applying?
You don't. Many people do. And in fact, you should feel free to reach out to James, to me, to anyone on the faculty. We're happy to answer questions that you have. And if there are administrative questions, Elizabeth can also help. So.
I can also like jump in and contribute to that answer. As someone who just applied, I was kind of concerned about this, and I didn't know if I should like cold email someone I'd never met, so I didn't. But I know that like some students do and some students don't, and it's not going to make or break your application. But if there is someone that you're interested in reaching out to, don't be afraid to contact them.
Yeah, full disclosure, you're supposed to say if you did contact someone and the dates, and then it appears as a small notation in the application, but we don't really consider it.
Great. I'll ask, is co-advising or dual advising a common form of advising? Are there departmental restrictions?
Should I answer? Someone else want to take it? It's common. There's a co-advised student of mine on this call. Yeah, I would say it's not the most common thing, but definitely happens. And there are, I wouldn't say departmental restrictions on it. In general, when students want to go outside of the home program in many programs, just all this asks is that there's a justification that people look at. But as long as it's a good match, it should be fine.
Yeah, I can just jump in as the student in Dance Lab who's co-advised. I'm not the only one, there are more. But I think as long as you have like a good reason for why you want to have two advisors for this particular project that you're interested in. I think when I reached out to Dan and Alice, they were very supportive and they thought it makes sense, so it happened. And I would say I really enjoy it.
Yeah, I'd say that it's also possible and more common, right, to have a very close collaborative project, right, with another PI with whom you meet, as frequently as if they would be your formal advisor. It's just not formalized as a convention.
Also, just to hop in, but as someone who has a lot of collaborations, another resource if you don't have a formal co-advise setup is you have a thesis committee that Elizabeth mentioned, and these are going to be faculty that are not the professor that you're working for, that you're meeting with every year and as you become a more senior graduate student more frequently. And so you will be getting advice from multiple people. And if you have someone who you would like to get their advice regularly, but maybe not be co-advised, it's a great opportunity to put them on your thesis committee as well.
Thanks, Laura. I guess another question probably for the faculty, the top voted question. What makes an applicant stand out in the application review committee?
James, want to take this one?
Sure. I mean, the whole admissions process is pretty holistic. There's no single criteria that's going to make or break anyone. So, I mean, typical things we'll consider are the grades. If you do have test scores that you supply or provide, that we'll consider those recommendation letters, your research experience and your own personal statement describing, what you've done and what you want to do. One thing I would sort of suggest is when I've gone through those things, the thing you have the most control over are your research statement. And so really trying to convey in an articulate and concise way what's driven you to choose a scientific career, and how do your experiences that you have so far fit to that, and what do you want to get out of it in the end? So what is your narrative? What is your story? And trying to really articulate that well, I think, is important. Trying to choose who you write your letters, I think, is useful too. People who know you well, and not necessarily those you took classes with. I think a lot of letters we see where a lecturer or a professor will say, this person was my class, that person got an A, maybe the top, 10% of the class for that year. Those are not particularly informative. We want to know someone who knows you well and can describe why you should be admitted to the program because of your personal qualities. So I think the more you can make it specific and personal to yourself, the more successful your application is going to be.
I wholeheartedly concur. I would say also every part of the application is an opportunity to convey to us, how interesting you are and why this is a good fit for you. And I think sometimes there's a missed opportunity there. The diversity statement, describing an interesting scientific problem. Be sure you're using all of those parts of the application as well as they can be.
Just a few more questions on this topic. Is the personal statement page limit very strict?
Elizabeth, this happens. Before it gets
Yeah.
fixed. Yeah, Elizabeth.
No, I don't know off the top of my head, but I can definitely get back to you on that.
Try
Do you
to
mind-
stick to the page limit. I think
Yeah,
it will help you
Yes.
be
Yeah,
better.
I think I usually see like a page. That's
Yeah.
But you're welcome to email me and I can confirm that for you.
Some can be too, but yeah, whatever it says, just stick to that.
Yeah.
I mean, keep in mind that many faculty will be reading dozens of applications. So longer is not necessarily in your favor. I think a concise, precise narrative that really clearly shows who you are as a person and what you would be like as a scientist is what you should aim for.
Yeah. I would say avoid, for example, which we sometimes get, lists of all of the techniques that you know how to perform. That's not what we're looking for.
Another anonymous question. Is the GRE score optional but recommended, or is it not required at all?
It's optional, and I will say that actually in the last year, the people who we accepted were less likely to have supplied GRE scores than those who we didn't accept. That being said, there are some folks in the past who have had maybe some problems in their transcript, for example, and maybe an interesting research experience. But the GRE was really helpful because they had a phenomenal score, and it made us think, maybe this person is worth checking out. So I guess I would say, like, if you have good scores, it's an opportunity to shine. Like, please share them. It can kind of only help.
Is there a GPA or class requirement to apply to CSB? I think the question is.
No.
I didn't think so. So I'm looking for all the application related ones. Another anonymous attendee asks, do faculty whom we refer in our application read our application materials? Do they get a say in our admission? I think that's asking about if you reach out to someone beforehand, maybe?
Yeah, so we are a very small department, and in the end, we all look at the files at some point, right? But at the beginning, it's a smaller group, and it's unlikely to include those people. And again, no one gets made an offer of admission if they are only interesting to one person or one faculty member. You have to have a clear fit that's articulated across the intellectual breadth of the department. So I guess I would say that those people will look at your file, but so will lots of other folks.
Yeah. Another anonymous question is, does it make sense to join the program even though I already hold a master's degree?
I mean, I think, you'd not be the first person with a master's degree to apply for a PhD program. To me, the degrees are worlds apart. I mean, what you will be able to achieve with a PhD degree is far beyond what you will be able to achieve with a master's in terms of just the jobs you'll be eligible for. So there's a number of people who will get a master's program as a adjunct with their bachelor's degree. I mean, Stanford has a program like that, and they would again apply for PhD programs just like a normal bachelor's degree person would. So I don't think it'll make a difference necessarily.
Yeah, it's not a plus, but not a minus.
I'll continue with a few more questions on admissions, then we can move on to the other questions that are being asked. So another anonymous question is, are the students who are accepted in the program mostly with post-bac research, or what can make an application competitive as a senior undergrad?
I think you heard from people on this call, right, who were all accepted, who have some variation of those things, right? Some come straight after undergrad, some have worked for a couple of years or done a formal post-bac. All of it's fine. I don't say that we look prejudicially on it. I will say that there's an expectation that if you did something else, sometimes that it should, you would expect a little bit more sophistication in an interview, let's say. But otherwise, I would say look at the files pretty equivalently. It depends, I think, a lot on how much research experience you had, right, in your undergrad training thus far.
Yeah, just to kind of like give some data, like there's 4 first-year PhD students, and 2 of us came right from undergrad and 2 of us didn't. So it's like an even split in the first years.
Thanks as well. Another anonymous question. Is there any expectation on biology-related undergraduate coursework for non-bio major applicants? And the student is a chemistry major, and the only bio courses they've completed are some modern bio courses in biochemistry.
No, there is not.
I would say we have at least a couple more senior graduate students who were also chemistry majors. And I mean, I think as someone who is in a more chemistry oriented lab, being able to think and understand biology and be excited about it is important, but you don't have to have a lot of formal research experience or coursework, because you're going to learn a lot of that at Stanford as well in this program.
I mean, one of my recent PhD graduates, she was from chemical engineering and had not taken a biology course in her life, but wound up doing a project in fish, and then now was the first scientific hire at a biology startup in Boston. So I think people have pretty diverse points of entry. What we look for is the intellectual spark that makes us convinced that they're going to be successful here.
Great. Lauren asks, is there a specific GPA cutoff to get into the application, to get the application into the faculty, or is it just A's and B's in science courses?
No cutoff. No, that's bad, right? As James said, we look at the application holistically, right? So no, we don't do that.
Great. I just want to make sure we get all of these application related questions. An anonymous attendee asks, should we avoid technicality in our personal statement or research description and instead focus on things that are not on our CV? What are some ways to demonstrate our technical strength in our unpublished work?
I think, you don't want to duplicate your CV, right? That's a waste of the space. And it's not bad to say, some name techniques you're excited about. Is what I was saying to avoid is a list of, we've seen before, bulleted lists of all of the instruments that the person has used. And that's probably not really helping you out too much. So I think what I really like to see is evidence of kind of like tenacity over the long term, sort of that, they've, the student has been really committed to trying to understand a problem. And, if you've overcome barriers to get there, please tell us about them there. I think, it's really your chance to provide a narration to the CV, to the other elements of the application, to explain who you are as a person and as a scientist.
Great. I think that kind of does answer this anonymous question, which is someone mentioned things CSB faculty look for in an application that might surprise us, and they want to elaborate on that. But I think that you just did that.
Yeah, I think many students assume that we have some cutoff in terms of test scores and GREs, and then we just put people in an Excel sheet and rank them. And instead, we spend countless hours poring over the applications, really trying to get a sense of who you are as scientists, and make a decision about the whole package.
Okay, there are more application related questions, but I want to just make sure we get to other questions as well. So Sydney asks, when do students normally participate in the Spark program during their graduate studies, earlier or later?
I can jump in and answer this. So I think most students choose to participate earlier, and that's for a couple of reasons. One, Spark, the course is only offered every other year, so you kind of want to take it once you have that initial opportunity to. And most people that take the Spark course, they are doing it in hopes that their project will eventually get funded even after the course is ended. And if so, you kind of want to have the most amount of time during your graduate career to like nurture that project and let it grow. So I think earlier the better.
Yeah, just to say that I believe it is just offered every other year. So you might not be able to take it in your first year, but then you can take it in your second year, and that's not a big deal.
And that being said, that's not the only avenue to participate in Spark. You could have you could have a project that's not through the class, and that could also be funded. And it would be like just having another Spark project that you like presented updates to the Spark community and attend the meetings.
Good point, Jacob. So I think Carly has an interesting question, which is, besides the things mentioned on the slides, what are some things that encompass a really good day or really bad day as a PhD student? What types of things make you happy to be there or frustrated to be there? I'm sure our graduate students have good answers.
I think for me, usually if I have a bad day or I'm frustrated with something, it has to relate to the science, as most things with research. That's most of our like source of frustration. But I think positive things are all things that we've mentioned on the slide. Being able to talk to the other students in the department, being able to ask for help or advice, those are always positive things for me.
One of my favorite things about Stanford is the physical location in Palo Alto. It was actually like one of the main decision-making factors at the very end of the process, because I felt like here I could have a more active lifestyle. It was like much more accessible. Like I bike to the lab every day and it's always nice weather out and not prohibitive of being outside like it sometimes is in Minnesota where I'm from. So it's just kind of conducive to having like a healthy lifestyle, which I really like.
And I
I think
think,
a small, oh, sorry.
go ahead, go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say, I think a small thing that always makes my day better is like the small social interactions that you get to have in the lab that can happen, randomly or organically, or even at pizza talks. And that's something that I only began to appreciate once we all had to do everything virtually. But now that we're kind of getting back to more in-person things, that's something I really appreciate and enjoy.
Yeah, and to kind of connect to the thing that we brought up a couple times earlier about how CSB is a small community in the biosciences. I think another really nice thing is that there are always talks going on that you can just drop in, that any department is holding, and there are like cross-department talks, like there's the Frontiers series, which is just a lot of really cool biology that they bring people from all around the world. And it's like really fun if you're going to a faculty talk or even like a student in another department and you're like, wait a second, that could kind of help inspire my research and be able to foster collaborations across Stanford that way.
If I can jump in and give my 2 cents on this question, I think as you enter grad school, it's really important to realize there's going to be a change in perspective. Right now you're in your undergraduate careers, you may have finished your undergraduate, and that's mostly coursework, and it's highly structured. You're about to embark on the greatest choose your own adventure of your life, where it'll be completely unstructured, and it's not clear what's going to happen or what's going to work. So I think when you choose your project, your lab, first thing is you got to make sure that you are excited about that question you're about to solve. It's going to get you up in the morning every day, even if it doesn't work. Because the reality is most of your experiments will not work. And you have to get through that and not take it personally. There's actually an article in the New York Times today about a scientist at the Broad Institute who was trying to discover a way to deliver adenovirus to muscle cells specifically, and actually got it to work by making a huge library of viruses, just like for those that target those cells. And he was inspired by it because his father has a muscular wasting disease that he, since he was a child, wanted to try to solve. But in the article, he says, I go today, I'll do 100 experiments, and I realize that 95 will not work. And that's just, I understand that that's the process. And I accept it, and I'm patient about it, because I know my long-term goal is worthwhile. So I think coming to grad school, you have to prepare yourself that that will be your new reality. And don't judge yourself based on an experiment that worked or didn't work. It's a marathon, it's a longer term goal, it's a broader, bigger goal, it's a vision. And the good thing about science is there'll be times, if you're lucky, where there may be a moment where you are the only person in the world who knows the answer to a question. until you are so excited, you tell your colleague, and now 2 people know. But in between all those moments are failed experiments. And that's just part of the process.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, James. I mean, my take on this question is to have neither really good or really bad days, and just to try to kind of stay even keeled. And even if I have a really exciting result, I'll, just like downplay it in my mind and yeah, just like kind of move on to the next day. But yeah, I think that's really a really good question, actually. Yeah, I think Rebecca started to answer this next question, but an anonymous attendee asks, how is the social atmosphere among students and between labs? And is it more on the competitive side or on the collaborative side or non-competitive side? I'm very interested in this program, but I'm not into very competitive atmospheres. I think we can answer this one.
Yeah, I would say we're not very competitive. We're very collaborative. With my cohort, I remember beginning of the year, we would take similar courses and just kind of work together. And I think in terms of science, we're also very collaborative. Not just within CSB, but within biosciences as a whole, where you could find people to talk to about your research and get advice from them, and you could present at lab meetings in like different labs and get advice like that. And yeah, so there's a lot of opportunities for collaboration here.
In my experience so far in my lab, every single person researching my lab has a collaboration with another lab in Stanford, and it's pretty common for people to have collaborations and to share reagents to people. We have a giant list there. People ask, do you have this reagent? Everyone is happy to share. There is no withholding or anything like that occurring.
Especially these days when things are kind of scarce.
Great. I think we're gonna just go back to a few of the more technical questions that are left about the admissions process. So hopefully our faculty can help answer these. So I think these will be quick. Is there a correlation between the number of recommenders and the odds of admission?
I think you're allowed to give 3, and you should give 3. If you're allowed to give more and you have a good one, then please do. But just James's comment about the kinds of letters that work well, really pay attention to that. I think in some cases you might be better off. I've seen, for example, a letter from a graduate resident advisor or undergraduate resident advisor that was much better than one provided by a professor who taught a class.
Great. Is there any possibility to apply with the IELTS results instead of TOEFL?
That's for Elizabeth.
Elizabeth?
Can you email me that question? I can send you a link with more information for that. And my email is ekay@stanford.edu.
Okay. Carly's asking about funding for MD PhD program.
So at Stanford, Elizabeth mentioned the funding mechanism. And yeah, basically, like, you don't have to pay tuition if that's your concern.
I do believe, though, for MD PhD students, that's like a separate.
Yeah, it's a totally separate admissions process. That's right.
And then we do have MD PhD students, and so that'll be dependent on when you are picking a lab, what lab you end up in. So you wouldn't apply to CSB, but you would apply to the MD PhD program, and then based on your research interest could be affiliated with.
But then later you would, yes, exactly. Later you would make an application, but as already an MD PhD student.
Okay. Fong is asking, I think related to a question that's been asked, is there any specific requirement for the PhD admission? For example, having a certain minimum credit hours in bioscience related modules? I think that's not the case. And then another anonymous attendee is asking, does having a faculty revise my application matter in the selection process?
Yeah, no.
I don't think so. Yeah. Michaela is asking, what is considered a good
I
GPA?
think it depends on the context, right? Some places inflate grades and some places
Depends on the
send
school.
us a letter before the transcript saying that they'll grade their classes around a 2.7 or even a 2.0. So we try to take into account, to the degree that we know it, to what degree the grades reflect deviation from what is considered normal at that institution. I would add that, don't feel bad about, or worried about, let's say a quarter or a semester where you had bad grades. We look at the whole transcript, and obviously if there's a repeated problem, we're concerned. If there's, one semester where, you had a difficult personal situation that's explained in a letter, and after that things perked up, then, it's not something that's going to count against you. So.
Okay, there are a few kind of specific science questions that we can ask. So Carly's asking, I'm studying post-translational modifications in mitochondrial proteins from lifestyle exposures. Is anyone else doing something like this, or know a lab that does?
And the two facts that come to mind who are working on mitochondria are Daria Moshel-Rosen and Alice Ting has also been doing some work on mitochondria-related proteins.
Mhm.
I also have to jump in and say, grad school is also a time to explore different fields of study or different topics of study. That's the whole point of rotating in your first year, so to try different things and see what you might be interested in.
And also, maybe we didn't make this clear, but the first year you will be doing 3 roughly 10-week rotations in a variety of labs, and you can use that as an opportunity to further explore questions you're already interested, to try and learn a new technique, but you can really use that as an opportunity to really figure out what is going to be your home and for your PhD. And you can also do more than 3 rotations. I did 4, I think Jacob did 5. You want to make sure you find the right spot. And I know coming into Stanford, I thought I knew exactly what I wanted to do, and I'm not doing that, and that's okay.
So we're already past time. I think we have time for one more question.
Great, there's one more good one that I was saving for the last question. So anonymous attendee asks, what makes Stanford students special? Do we have thoughts on that? I want to say nothing. But maybe the others would disagree.
I think we just happen to fit well with the program. Yeah, I think that's the only thing that differs from us in different schools with different programs.
Yeah, I guess I want to say I agree with Owen. I don't think it's for anything, but Stanford is a place that values your own uniqueness, and whatever you want to do, you can almost, I would say almost certainly find someone who's also interested in that, whether it's swimming, dancing, or if it's a science question that you are really interested in.
Yeah, I guess by that I mean sorry, Jacob, just to say I think that all of us could have had successful graduate careers at a number of other institutes. And so it's not about, you want to fit in with the program at Stanford, but there's nothing unique about us and Stanford in particular. Maybe that's not the case, but yeah.
I was gonna say that, I think wherever I go, there are always very intelligent and interesting people to meet here, who always ask great questions if you talk to them about your research, or have interesting hobbies or interesting projects and aspirations of their own.
I think this doesn't make us as students special, but I think there are a lot of great resources you can capitalize on. Not all graduate schools have a medical school, and we're actually part of the School of Medicine. And so you can get access to clinical samples pretty easily. And so And we have engineering schools that you can collaborate with and natural science schools. And so I think there's a lot of opportunities that you can capitalize on if you are here. But that being said, like you should find the program where you are going to, like James said, find that research interest that gets you out of bed in the morning when your experiment failed last night. So.
Great. Well, thank you,
And I think
everyone.
students
ahead.
at Stanford, just my last 2 cents. I think students at Stanford are fantastic. I think students at Harvard are fantastic. I think we're fortunate that we're surrounded by very talented people. What I think distinguishes Stanford from other universities is the culture, I would say, and that there's a culture of collaboration and camaraderie that is unique to Stanford, in part because we're in such close proximity with all the other schools. We're one big and yet small community that really is striving towards a larger goal. And I think that's unique among universities that you can find in the United States.
I would concur, having trained in a different environment. Yeah, I think we're very fortunate to be in a place that is, on the one hand, clearly one of the most preeminent institutions in the world, and on the other hand, also really values people and is collaborative, respectful. It isn't always that way at other places.
Great. Well, thank you everyone for speaking. Thank you to our attendees. I'll be sending out the slides to everyone who attended. And we'll be posting the video online, and we look forward to hopefully receiving your application. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.